In this podcast, we're going to be working with the equations and graphs of circles, and we'll solve some volume problems. All right, so here we have a circle, and this one's all the circle and volume problems are in your notes. So make sure you're solving them with me. So C is the center of the circle shown. We want to write the equation. All right, so remember the equation of a circle is, waiting for my pen to write. Spinning ball of death is not a good thing. Any day now. There we go. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared. It takes the board a little while to get going. And this equals r squared. And so the center of our circle is hk, and of course r is the radius. So the negative signs go in the equation, so all we have to do is identify our center and identify our radius. So the center is right at negative 2, 1. And the radius is 1, 2, 3. It's just 3. Okay. So the equation for our circle will be x minus a negative 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 3 squared. And then we should simplify out the double negatives. So x plus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 9. And so the equation that matches ours is the last one, D here. All the other ones either have a sign error or they forgot to square the radius. So that's all there is to it. In terms of writing the equation, if we have the center and the radius, is we just have to plug them in. Okay? Just got to remember your formula and plug them in. And then simplify out the radius, double negative and double negatives. All right, let's look at the next problem. Write the standard equation of the circle. All right, so we have to identify our center. And so the center of our circle is at 0, 0. We've got to identify the radius. All right, so be careful. The scale is by 2, so 2, 4, 6. The radius is 6. Equation of a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. But the center is just zeros. So I'd have x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared is 6 squared. Well, I don't need those zeros. I could just write x squared plus y squared equals 36. And that is the equation for our circle. Okay. So if your center of your circle is at the origin, is at 0, 0, then you're just going to have an x squared and a y squared. Because subtracting 0 isn't going to change anything. All right, so there's our second problem. All right, so now this one is a little more work. All right, so our equation here is not in standard form. We have x squared plus y squared plus 2x minus 8y plus 17 equals 9. All right, we have to get that equation in standard form first. All right, so step number 1 is there's a 17 over here. We need to subtract that to the other side. So we're going to subtract the constant term. I'm going to move that constant term. All right, so we'll subtract 17 from both sides. And we have x squared plus y squared plus 2x minus 8y equals negative 8. Okay. Step number 2, we want to put the x terms together and the y terms together. And we don't want x's and y's all mixed up, otherwise that's going to make it difficult for us. So we have x squared plus 2x, and I'm going to leave a little space, plus y squared minus 8y equals negative 8. Step 3 is we want to make these perfect squares, okay, so that we can factor and we'll have an written in the equation of a circle. Because remember what our equation of a circle looks like, it's x plus or minus something squared, y plus or minus a constant squared. Okay, so we want, if we can factor this, we'll and we can factor it as a perfect square, then we'll have the equation of a circle. But we have to add the right value to both sides of our equation to make sure this is a perfect square. So what do we want to add to x? Well, always we're going to take our b term. It's the coefficient in front of x, divide by 2 and square. That's the value that will make a perfect square. So for the x's, our b is 2. So we're going to divide 2 by 2 and square, which gives us 1 squared, or 1. And we're going to add that to x. Right, so we're going to put in a plus 1 over here. Do the same thing, but with the b term for y. So the b term for y is a negative 8. So we have negative 8 divided by 2 squared. That's negative 4 squared, which is 16. So we'll add a 16. Of course, if we add, and actually just to help you see, make sure you see exactly what we're doing, I'm just going to do this as 2 steps. I'm going to write what I put over on the side. I'm going to just put that right here so you can see. So what we've added is we've added, and I think it'll help you factor if I do that. So we've added to this side 2 divided by 2 squared, and we've added to this side negative 8 divided by 2 squared. So if we add those things to one side of our equation, we have to add it to the other. So we did add in a 1 and a 16. All right, so we have, let's just make this a little nicer. We have x squared plus, actually I'm going to write that here so my values stand out. Come on. So, oops. The board is really slow in erasing here. All right, so we have x squared plus 2x plus 1. Oops. And it decided to change my page. There we go. Guess it's mad at me. So we're saying it was slow. X squared plus 2x plus 1, and y squared minus 8y plus 16. And on the other side, we have 16 plus 1 would be 17, minus 8 is 9. Okay. So now we can factor. When we factor, it will always be x plus or minus, whatever the sign is for your b term, b divided by 2. Okay. It will always be that. Because we've designed this to be a perfect square, because if we can't write this as a perfect square, we can't write the equation of a circle. So x squared plus 2x plus 1 factors to x plus 1 times x plus 1. We could write that as x plus 1 squared. And y squared minus 8y plus 16 factors to y minus 4 times y minus 4, which we could rewrite as y minus 4 squared. And of course that equals 9. And we're done. There's our equation right there. There's the equation of the circle. It is written in that format, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. And that hk is our center, which means our center, don't forget the negative is with the equation. So if we see a plus, it means we really have minus a negative. So our center is at -1, 4. And our radius is 3. And therefore our answer is B. Okay? So make sure on these problems you don't guess. You just use completing the square to rewrite the equation of the circle, and then you can identify the radius and the center. Okay. And I think there's another one in this podcast, so make sure you add this. You have plenty of space in your notes by the circles, and a lot of extra space there. All right, let's look at the next problem. All right, so we want to graph the circle. And so we have to match the equation to the graph here. And to do that, we're going to have to put the equation into standard form. We don't have quite as much space here. I think if I work over here, I'll be okay. So step number, and I'll just do all the work, but I won't write the steps. Like I won't write step number 1, move constant. We'll just move the constant. And that is our step number 1, is we need to add 19 to both sides. So we have x squared plus y squared plus 2x plus 8y equals 19. Step 2, put the x terms together and the y terms. So x squared plus 2x, and I'm going to leave a space, and y squared plus 8y is equal to 19. And leave a space. Okay. So now we want to add that perfect number that makes this a perfect square, and that number is b divided by 2. Our b is 2 for the x's, so we're going to add 2 divided by 2 squared. To the y's, we're going to add half of 8. Our b is 8. So we have 8 divided by 2 squared. And if we add it to one side, we have to add it to the other. So 2 divided by 2 squared. Oops. Not good enough. And 8 divided by 2 squared. All right, so now let's simplify that. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 1 plus y squared plus 8y plus 16 equals. And so that's 19 plus 1 plus 16. And that's going to give us 36. And so now we can factor. Right, so x squared plus 2x plus 1 is x plus 1 times x plus 1, which we could rewrite as x plus 1 squared. And y squared plus 8y plus 16 is y plus 4 times y plus 4. So notice it's just half of your b term. And we could rewrite that as y plus 4 squared, and then that equals 36. So we have our equation. Will it move a little bit for me? No, maybe not. Doesn't seem like it's a hard thing to move an equation, but I guess it is. All right, so here's our equation. I'll underline it. There's our equation right there. All right, so now we need to identify our center. Our center is at the point -1, -4. Okay, the signs are going to be the opposite. And the radius is the square root of 36, which is 6. All right, so now we have to match it. Looks like all the radii are exactly the same, so that won't be the problem. We have to look at the center. So -1, -4. All right, so our center here was definitely at +1. We can see at the center, this graph has been shifted to the right, so that's not the right answer. All right, so over here, our center looks to be at 1 +4, so that's not right. How about over here at B? So -1 and down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So our center is here. That looks pretty good, and it looks better than this one over here, which is at -1, but it's at +4. All right, so that one is incorrect, and the correct one is the one that's kind of hidden by my work here. It's this guy right here. Okay, so you can see his center is at -1, -4, and all of these had a radius of 6. Okay, so when we don't have our equation in standard form, we're going to need to put it in standard form using completing the square. All right, and this one is in your notes, as is the very last one on circles, which I believe is a quick one to solve. What's the equation of for circle O shown in the graph below? Well, this is not too hard. Our center is at the point 3, -1, and the radius is 3. All right, so the correct equation, number 1's incorrect because they squared wrong. 3 squared is not 6. So that leaves us the bottom ones. And so this one, 3, -1, they squared correctly. There's our equation right there. Okay, so just make sure you remember that the signs will be the opposite on the center, and the radius is squared. All right, so those are all the circle problems. Let's look at volume. And we have formulas to calculate out the volume. And so I have the formula listed above, and I'm going to solve it down below. If you see the words altitude and height are the same thing. So if on a test you see altitude, it's the same thing as height. It's the straight vertical distance, as opposed to this slanted distance here, which is called slant height. When we say height, we usually mean the vertical height that's inside. Like for instance, it's 11 centimeters, that is height. If we want looking at the outside, it's called the slant. All right, so to find the volume of a pyramid, and this is in your notes along with the formula, you're going to take 1/3 the area of the base times the height. Next week I'll explain where's the derivations of these formulas. For now we're going to just work with them and find the volume. Okay, so that B there means area of the base. Okay, that's what B means. Okay, so our base here, we'll find that first. Our base is just a rectangle. So the base on a pyramid is the side opposite the pointed side, the side with the vertex. So right down here is our base. It's a rectangle, and the area of a rectangle is length times width. So the area of our base is just 8 times 14, which is 112. The height is given, so I'm going to actually work over here. So the base is 112, the height is given, it's 11 centimeters. Equals 11 centimeters, and so the volume is just 1/3 times 112 times 11. I'm going to reduce, I can reduce, no I can't, because 3 doesn't divide evenly into 112. So I can't do any reducing. So we're just going to multiply the numerator and multiply the denominator. Right, so we have 112 times 11, which is 1,232. Right, all over 3, and you can leave the exact answer. You don't have to get a decimal equivalent. The exact answer is actually much nicer. And this is measured in centimeters. Centimeters cubed. Volume is a cubic measure. Okay, so that's all there is to finding the volume here. We just take the area of the base, which is a rectangle, and we've done area, and then multiply it by the altitude. And so long as we know the altitude, it's not too hard of a problem. Right, so the same thing here. We want to find the volume of the figure. Our base is right there. It's the rectangle. So our base is just 7 times 5, which is 35 inches squared. The height of the pyramid equals 10 inches. And so our volume is 1/3 the area of the base. I'll write it down. So 1/3 area of the base times the altitude. All right, so we have 1/3 times 35 times 10. So much for much simplifying. Our volume is 350 thirds inches cubed. There's our volume. That's all there is to it. Okay. Let's find the volume of the cylinder here. Okay. So volume of a cylinder is a lot like the volume of the pyramid, with the exception of the 1/3. It's actually a lot like the volume of a prism. It's just the area of the base times the height of the cylinder. Of course, this is our base is a circle. So since the base is a circle, we can replace that base with the formula for area of a circle, which is pi r squared, and then height. Right? So our radius here is 6. This is the height here. It's the distance between the bases. So this is our height, and it is 20. So we have that our volume is pi times 6 squared times 20. And we have pi times 36 times 20, which is 720 feet. Oops, almost forgot my pi. 720 pi. Come on. It helps if you put the marker down when you're trying to erase. 720 pi feet cubed. So there is our volume. Okay? So it's just really like finding the area of a circle, except you're going to multiply it by the height of the cylinder, because you're finding all the space in between those two bases. The cone. The cone is a lot like it's a little bit like the cylinder, and it's a little bit like the pyramid. It's like the cylinder. We have a circle base. It's like the pyramid because it slants in. Our volume is 1/3 the area of the base times the height. And because our base is a circle, that means our volume is 1/3 pi r squared times the height of our cylinder. All right, so be careful, make sure you use height and make sure you use radius. So we're given the diameter there, we can tell because the line goes across. Our radius is half of that, or 5. And this is slant height. So we have to find this straight vertical height. So we're measuring the inside part. If you notice, we have a right triangle, so we can use Pythagorean theorem here. The base, this triangle here is half of 10, or 5, and so our missing height would just be found by doing 5 squared plus h squared equals 13 squared. So that's 25 plus h squared equals 169. Subtract 25 from both sides, and h squared is 144, and the square root of that is 12. So that's our height. We have to make sure we use that value. So our volume here, now that we've got the height of our cone, and we've got the radius, and so we can just plug in those values. The volume is 1/3 pi 5 squared times 12. So that would be 1/3 pi times 25 times 12. We can do a little reducing here with the 3. 3 goes into 12 4 times. And that means our answer here is 100 pi centimeters cubed. And we have found the volume of the cone. I have one last figure for us to find the volume of. I think it's the easiest of all because it has only one dimension, and that's the sphere. Okay? You can be given the radius, you can be given the diameter. That's about it. All right, so a sphere is a set of points in space that are given distance from a given point called the center, and the volume of a sphere is that formula up there, 4/3 pi r cubed. Right, so I don't know whether that 60 is supposed to be, it looks like it's supposed to be the diameter because we see a line right there. This could have been just a little bit clearer, but so our diameter is 60, which means that our radius is half of that, or 30. So the volume is 4/3 times pi times 30 cubed. Right, so that would be, oops, okay, would be 4/3 pi times 900. Right, and so divide 3 into 900, that would be 300. And our final answer here is that the volume is 1200 pi, what is this, feet cubed. Okay. And so that's all there is to finding volume. Right? So we did a variety of problems here. And this is the end of my podcasts and the end of the review for benchmarks. So good luck, and let me know if you have questions. Bye.